If you've watched The Wolf of Wall Street, you've probably noticed that the movie hardly explains how exactly Belfort made over $100 million. Martin Scorsese hides this dirty scheme behind two words: aggressive sales. Right now, I'm going to break down this scheme, and along the way, I'll tell you why the director makes us love a con man, why he turns brokers into animals, and who actually ends up being the fool by the end of the film. In an interview, DiCaprio admitted that when he read Belfort's autobiography, he immediately knew this scandalous material had to go to Scorsese. Because throughout his long career, Scorsese has repeatedly turned to the biographical genre, but each time he's aimed to move away from the classic biography and not just show the life of a historical figure, but portray the main character as contradictorily as possible, as a real person of flesh and blood, with weaknesses, vices, and charm. That's why many people point out that the director doesn't judge his characters. Instead, he even seems to encourage criminality. That's true, and a little later I'll tell you why he does it. But for now, let's play a trivia game. Answer one question. What genre does this film belong to? Comedy? Crime? Biography? Maybe drama? And now that you've chosen one of the options, I'll confess that I tricked you. This film's genre is advertisement. Don't believe me? Okay, watch this. The story is often told by the main character himself, and since Jordan Belfort is a genius salesman, this film also tries to sell us something from the very first minutes, breaking the fourth wall. And in fact, Martin Scorsese has made some of the coolest commercials for various brands several times. Here are the classic appeals to the potential viewer customer. Smooth camera orbits around the house, the yacht, cars, and explicit shots of Margot Robbie's character, referencing the signature style of Playboy magazine. Fast editing, sharp changes in shot scale. I can sense the question, so what is Scorsese selling us? Well, the marketing product here is certainly not a house or a yacht, but money and drugs. In its promotional version, the world of stockbrokers on Wall Street looks unnaturally bright, loud, colorful, and just crazy, resembling a perpetual carnival that enchants the viewer. That's the goal, to enchant the viewer. Soon you'll understand why. Though maybe you'll understand right now. Watch closely. The main characters and the world they live in first intrigue us, sometimes surprise us, often make us laugh. Belfort has a dream and a family, but no money. We are thrown into the thick of things. Everything around is bright and fast-paced. Then he gets money, a lot of money. The more he gets, the more eagerly Scorsese begins to dismantle this glossy image himself, pushing the pursuit of wealth and pleasure to the point of absurd oversaturation, bringing the characters to the edge where money, sex, and drugs no longer bring any pleasure. The business starts to crumble like a house of cards, and Scorsese dramatically shifts the film's true genre, moving away from the promotional black comedy toward realism. The tone of the film changes to something more serious and dramatic. The editing slows down, shots get longer, colors dull. Different facets of self-destruction begin to be explored. But okay, don't be sad. We've reached the midpoint of the video, which means it's time to make good on my promises. I promised I'd explain how Belfort actually made his fortune. If you watch the movie, you get the impression that Jordan's only crime is the exorbitant commission. But actually, the scheme is much more interesting. I'm going to play the part of Margot Robbie from The Big Short right now. Anyway, the scheme is called Pump and Dump. Jordan bought up shares in small, unknown companies. He did this through proxies because a broker isn't allowed to trade in stocks he himself owns. Once the shares were in his possession, he started the pump, aggressively selling them to his clients. Demand grew, the price skyrocketed. Then came the dump phase. Jordan sold his shares at an astronomical price. Trusting investors were left with worthless securities, and he took the money. He repeated the cycle dozens of times. The biggest con was with the IPO of Steve Madden, the shoe company. That's this guy. Belfort pumped so much money into the deal that he could have made $1 billion. But at one point he got scared of FBI scrutiny and sold a stake for just $30 million. To be honest, he was really good at cheating, although as he himself admitted to the FBI agent, he was far from the biggest fish on Wall Street, just one of the ones who got caught. By the way, if you're still curious about the animals, I'll tell you about that now. The people in the film are compared to animals, directly and indirectly. Well, it's obvious even from the film's title. Jordan Belfort is a wolf able to sense prey and make a deadly lunge at the right moment. He is surrounded by a pack of loyal scavengers. Mark Hanna, on the other hand, is more like a regal lion. At the start of Jordan's journey, he's not only a guide and mentor, but also embodies the image of the king of this kingdom. By the way, the company logo also features a lion. Why? I'll show you clearly. What do you see on the screen? That's a food chain. It translates perfectly to the film. Sweet berries are the trusting clients. They are fed upon by herbivores, the regular employees who sit on the phones every day. They can't yet hunt other animals, but they are already feeding. Then the small predator jackals. These are the department heads who can't find food for themselves but happily eat the weak. Wolves, Jordan Belfort and his inner circle. Lions, Mark Hanna and those above him. They've already gone through the entire chain and survived it. By the way, the company's chants sound like wild animal howls. The office is filmed in a way that makes it look like a cage full of bustling hamsters, and the boss's open-plan area looks more like a main terrarium full of snakes. A major theme of the film is addiction, in the broadest sense. Money here is clearly rhymed with drugs. It's no coincidence that as the characters increase their dose, the company's capital grows too. And if at first Belfort and his comrades' desire to get rich seems perfectly natural, soon the success drunk brokers blow a fuse. Just as the seasoned Mark Hanna warned at the film's outset, and as inevitably happens with any addiction. While using drugs, the main character constantly comments on their effects, describing his body's state at different stages of altered consciousness. Cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto was responsible for showing the distorted perception of the world on screen, and he did an excellent job. Each time the editing in these scenes is either unnaturally fast or, conversely, goes into extreme slow motion. It all depends on the type of high. So what's the point of the film after all? Ultimately, Scorsese ends up critiquing the American dream, and the Wall Street brokers are likened to American society itself. Jordan Belfort is a typical representative of the middle class, the very class whose backs he built his empire on, managing to escape the poverty he so despised. When Jordan Belfort arrives on Wall Street, he has two paths: either stay honest but not rich, doing his job with integrity, or cross the line and start deceiving clients, become a predator, and rise to the heavens. This conflict is shown most vividly in the scene on the yacht where DiCaprio's character first meets the FBI agents. And while at first we see the American flag behind the relaxed Belfort, later the scene shifts and the symbol of the US is now behind the public servant. In the end, the villain gets what he deserves, and his nominal victor, the FBI agent, goes home on the subway among other tired, ordinary people just like him. So who ends up being the fool? Ultimately, the anti-hero isn't punished for his crimes. In fact, it's the opposite. Belfort, after getting out of prison, starts it all over again. Scorsese justifies crime exactly to the extent that the characters in his story do. Only in this way can we understand them, to put ourselves in their shoes before the story hits the hero in the gut. He doesn't judge the characters, and he always asks the actors not to judge their characters either. Everyone on set knew their goal was to justify their character, just as their real-life counterparts did. Every viewer should catch the moment when the character crosses the line, so that later, in their own life, they don't make the same mistake.